Okay, so in this example here, we're going to be talking about how to get the equation of a parabola. And you can see that we're dealing with either a horizontal parabola or a vertical parabola. Now, I have a whole table here of everything that you're going to need to find the equation of a parabola. But to be honest with you, you only really need to know this part here, which is going to be the equation, and this part here, which is going to be the direction. This part right here you can use, but you won't really need it, and you'll see why as we go through the problems here. You can simply just count on the coordinate grid to get the focus in the directrix, and we'll talk about how you're going to do that. Also, if you're wondering where these equations come from, so for example, a horizontal parabola and a vertical parabola, I have a video on deriving the equation of a parabola. So if you're curious as to where this comes from, I'll go ahead and drop the link to that video below. That way you have access to that content. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into these examples, and then we'll talk about how we're going to get the equation of these parabolas. So here's your first example, and you can see that I'm dealing with a parabola that is opening horizontally, okay? So when you have a parabola, you have some different possibilities that could be happening. You could have a parabola that's opening up, or you could have a parabola that's opening down. We would consider that a vertical parabola, okay? Or you could have a parabola that is opening sideways like we have here, okay? And that could be to the right or to the left like this here, and we consider that a horizontal parabola. Now there's three key points that you want to keep in mind when you're dealing with a parabola, and that is going to be the vertex, the focus, and the directrix, okay? So if you're dealing with a vertical parabola like these two right here, your directrix will always be either below or above your vertex. So for example, your directrix here on this parabola would be right here. On this one, it would be right here. So again, you can see that it's occurring below and above. Now, if it's sideways, if it's opening to the left, it's going to be to the right of that vertex. And if it's opening to the right, it's going to be to the left of that vertex, okay? And then you're going to have something called a focus. So your focus is going to be either above your vertex or below your vertex if you're dealing with a vertical parabola. So for example, your focus would be right here on this parabola. On this one here, it would be right here. Now, if you're dealing with a horizontal parabola and it's opening to the right, that means it's going to be to the right of the vertex, so right here. And if it's opening to the left, it's going to be to the left of the vertex right here, okay? So again, three key things that you want to keep in mind, and that is your directrix, your focus, and your vertex, okay? Now, your focus and your directrix, they have an interesting relationship, and that is they're going to be equidistant from the vertex. So the distance from the vertex to the focus is going to be the same as the vertex to the directrix, and you'll see how that will come into play here. All right, so let's go ahead and get rid of all this here, all right? And let's talk about how we're going to get this equation. So you can see that they give us a focus of 2, 3. They give us a vertex of -1, 3. And again, the parabola is already being graphed for us. And we know that it's going to be opening horizontally. And it's going to be opening horizontally to the right. Now, how do we know it's going to be horizontal? And how do we know that it's going to be opening to the right? Well, this gives it away right here. Look at your vertex and look at your focus. Your vertex is clearly occurring behind your focus, right? And you can see that my y values are not changing here, but the only values that are changing are my x values. So you can clearly see that it's going to be opening horizontally. So again, if you didn't even have this yellow parabola being graphed right now, if you just put on your focus right here and then your vertex right here, you would easily be able to tell that, okay, that's opening horizontally and to the right. So how do I get the equation of this here? And the first thing that you want to do is you want to write out the equation for a horizontal parabola. And that is going to be x minus h equal to 1 over 4p. So 1 over 4p. And then in parentheses, you have y minus k and then squared. Okay. And again, I'm grabbing that right off that table that I showed you at the beginning. And so from here, you're really just plugging in. Now, one value that we don't have here is p. Okay. We have h, we have k. That's going to be my vertex. So -1 is my h. And 3 is my k, right? But I don't have p. Now, p is pretty easy to get. That's going to be the distance from your vertex to your focus. And also, it's going to be the distance from your vertex to your directrix. Now, P could be either positive or negative. If you go back to that table that I showed you at the beginning, if you're dealing with a horizontal parabola and it's opening to the right, like we have here, we're going to call P positive. Now, if it was opening to the left, like this here, okay, P would be negative. But again, it's still going to be the distance from your vertex to your focus and from your vertex to your directrix. The only difference is it's either going to be positive or negative depending on how the parabola is opening up, okay? In this case here, it's opening to the right, it's horizontal, so P will be positive here. And so how do we get P? Well, it's really simple. All we have to do is find this distance right here, okay? What is that distance going to be going from my vertex to my focus? Well, I can see that my x value here is -1, and then going to my focus, it becomes +2, right? That's a change of 3. So P here is going to be equal to 3, all right? So +3 because, again, it's opening to the right. So now all you have to do is plug it in. And if you really wanted to finish off this graph here, right, you could actually put on the directrix. So knowing that we have a p-value of 3 here, we know that the directrix is also going to be a distance of 3 from the vertex. So for example, if I'm looking at the vertex point, which is -1, 3, that means my directrix is going to be passing through the point -4, 3, right? I'm going to go over 3, a distance of 3. And then again, you would have a vertical line going right through, right, this point, something like this here, okay? And then that would be done, okay? So there's your directrix, there's your focus and your vertex, all right? But they're not even asking for that. They just want the equation. So let's go ahead and write the equation. You're going to have here x, and then your h value is -1, right? So when I plug that in, it becomes +1. So +1 equal to 1/4 times p. Well, what's my p? My p here is 3, and again, it is positive because it's opening horizontally to the right. So I'm going to do 4 times 3, I get 12. And then in parentheses here, I get y. What's going to be my k? Well, my k is 3, so I get y minus 3. And then square it, and there it is. Here is the equation of my parabola, and we're done, okay? So again, not too bad. It's pretty easy. You're just simply plugging in your values, and then you'll get the equation of your parabola. All right, let's go ahead and try another example. So here's my next example, and you can see that they did not even graph the parabola, and that's fine. But they tell us that the focus is going to be 3, 5, and the directrix is going to be y equal to 1. Now, just looking at my directrix, my focus, what type of parabola am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with a vertical or a horizontal? And I'm going to be dealing with a vertical here because I can clearly see that my focus is right here, and then I have my directrix right here, right, this red line. So that tells me that my vertex has to be in between the two of them. So somewhere in here, right? And so clearly that has to be a vertical parabola, right? It's opening up. So if I have a vertical parabola opening up, that means that my p-value here, my distance going from my vertex to my focus and my vertex to my directrix, is going to be positive, all right? So how do I get the equation of this parabola? Well, your first step, go ahead and write out the equation for a vertical parabola, and that is going to be y minus k equal to, and then we're going to do 1/4p. In parentheses, we're going to have x minus h. And then squared, again, I'm grabbing that right off the table from the beginning. And so from here, we need to figure out what our p-value is going to be here. And we should probably put on our actual quadratic. So this point right here, our vertex, we know it's going to be in between our directrix and our focus. So this point here has to be 3, 3, right? Meaning my p-value here is going to be a distance of 2, right? Going from 3 to 5 is a distance of 2, and going from 3 to 1 is also going to be a distance of 2. So again, my point here for my vertex is going to be 3, 3, meaning you're going to have a parabola opening up, something like this here. Okay, let me do it on this side too. It's not perfect, but you get the idea, right? So from here, we're just going to put it all together. So here's p. P is going to be equal to 2, okay? And also going from your vertex to your directrix, that will also be a p-value of 2. And again, it's going to be positive because it's opening upwards, right? So all you have to do is put it all together now. What's your h? What's your k? Well, my h here is going to be 3, and my k is also 3, right? That's my vertex. So putting it all together, you're going to get the following. You get y minus k, so y minus 3, equal to 1 over 4 times p. Well, my p value here is 2, positive 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. I get 1 over 8. And then in parentheses, I get x minus h. My h is 3. And then squared, and then I'm done. Here it is, right? Very simple. All right, let's try another example here. Okay, so here's my next example. And just looking at what they give us, we have a vertex of 2, 6 and a directrix of y equals 8. So you can see that the directrix is going to be above the vertex, meaning we are going to have a vertical parabola here opening downwards, meaning it's going to look something like this here, opening down, okay? So on this one here, our p value is actually going to be negative when we plug it in. It's going to be negative because our parabola is opening downwards. And again, you can refer back to that table. I wrote in those rules when p will be positive and when p will be negative. And this is one of the cases where p will be negative, all right? So you're not going to do anything different, but all you have to remember is when you plug in p, make sure you're plugging it in as negative, okay? So what do we need to do here? Well, I have my directrix of y equals 8. I have my vertex 2, 6. I'll go ahead and label my vertex as h and k, okay? And if you really wanted to here, you could go ahead and put on your focus, right? So my focus here, again, is going to share the same distance that my directrix does from my vertex. So looking at the distance from my vertex to my directrix is going to be a distance of 2. And so from here, if you want to go ahead and put on your focus, you can. That's going to be somewhere over here. Now, what are going to be the coordinates of that focus? Well, if you look at your vertex here, the distance going from your vertex to your directrix is going to be a distance of 2. Again, 6 to 8 is a distance of 2. Meaning I'm also going to have a distance of 2 here going from my vertex to my focus. So this point right here is going to be my focus, and it's going to be 2, 4. Okay? So again, they're not even asking for that. They just want the equation of the parabola, but kind of just labeling everything. That's how it would look. And then putting on your parabola, you'd be opening downwards, something like this here. Okay? And again, I'm doing it by hand. It's not perfect. Okay? But that's what it's going to look like. And so now writing out the actual equation, the first thing we need to do is write out the template for that equation. So it's a vertical parabola. That's going to be the following. We have y minus k equal to 1 over 4p. And then in parentheses, we're going to have x minus h and then squared. So we're going to go ahead and plug it in. So I'm going to do y minus k. My k here is 6. So I get y minus 6. Okay, equal to, now I'm going to have 1 over 4 times p. What is my p? Well, we talked about that already. We're going to have a distance of 2 here for my p, right? So p is going to be 2, but remember, it's opening downwards, right? So what you want to do here, let me go ahead and pick a different color. When I put on my p, again, this distance here is technically going to be 2, but since it's opening downwards, I'm going to call it negative. So p is going to be equal to negative 2. Same thing going from your vertex to your focus. That's also going to be a distance of 2. But again, since it's opening downwards, that will be negative 2, right? P is equal to negative 2. So make sure you're plugging in a negative 2 here, not a positive 2. And so when I plug it into this part here, 1 over 4 times p, that's going to give me negative 1 over 8. Because again, I'm plugging in a negative 2. 4 times negative 2, I get negative 8. So I get this fraction here, negative 1 over 8. And then in parentheses, I get x. My h value here is going to be 2. So minus 2, and then squared, and then I'm done. Here it is, right? So there's the equation of that parabola. All right, let's try one more example. Okay, so here's our next example, and we have 4 questions here. The first question says, what direction is the parabola opening? So we're either going to say up or down, or left or right here. Now, I know it's going to be horizontal because I have an x value right here. And if you go back to the table, if you have an x value right there, that means that you're dealing with a horizontal parabola. If it was a y value, so if you had y here, that would be a vertical parabola, right? But this one's going to be horizontal. So it's either going left or right. So I don't know yet what direction it's going, but if I look at this value right here, this negative 36, okay, remember, part of your template is 1 over 4p. And if this value ends up being negative, we know that that's going to be opening to the left if we're dealing with a horizontal parabola. So this one is opening to the left, okay? That's what that negative is indicating. Now, number 2 is saying, what is our focus? So how do we find our focus? Well, once we know our vertex, we're just going to add that distance p, and that will give us the coordinates of the focus. So the first thing that I need to do here is I have to figure out what is going to be my vertex, and that's going to be right here and here. So this is h and this is k. So pulling that out, that's going to give me 3, comma, negative 6, okay? So since it's opening up horizontally to the left, the only value that's going to be changing here is my x value, all right? And I'm going to be adding p to that. So how do I get p? Well, we're going to go back over here, and if you look at what I have right here, this 1 over 4p, we know that that's going to be part of our template. So if I simply just take this negative 36 right here and set it equal to 4p, that's going to allow me to solve for p. So for example, I'm going to say 4p is equal to negative 36. And then if I solve for p by dividing both sides by 4, I get p is equal to negative 9. Now remember, this is going to be a distance. The negative is indicating that it's opening to the left. But again, we're still going to apply a distance of 9 here. So if I go back to my vertex, my x value here is 3. It's opening to the left. So again, it looks like this here. Okay. So here's my vertex, meaning my focus is going to be in this direction here, somewhere over here, right? So essentially what you're going to do, it is a distance of 9, but you're going to be going to the left. So you're going to start at 3 and you're going to go to the left 9. Or in other words, you're going to do 3 minus 9. When you do that, you get negative 6. And that's going to be my focus. Remember, the y value is not going to change here. So my focus is going to be negative 6, comma, negative 6. Then on number 3, it's saying, what is your directrix? Well, your directrix is just going in the opposite direction. So if I start at the vertex and I go to the right, that's going to give me my directrix. And again, it's going to be a distance of p, or in this case here, a distance of 9. So since I'm going to the right, I'm going to add 9 here. I'm going to do 3 plus 9, and that will give me 12. So I can represent my directrix with a vertical line since my parabola is horizontal, right? There's going to be a vertical line here being my directrix. And we're going to call that line x equals positive 12. Again, just applying that distance of 9 to my x value of that vertex, right? And then finally, it says, what is the axis of symmetry? So when you're dealing with a parabola, the axis of symmetry is going to be that imaginary line that if I were to fold up that parabola, it would fold perfectly. So in this case here, it's going to be a horizontal line. And in particular, it's going to be going right through the vertex. So for example, it will look like something here, okay? And again, it is imaginary. But again, they want to know what is that going to be? And we're going to represent that with a horizontal line. So it's going to be y is equal to, and that's going to be the y value of your vertex right here. So y is equal to negative 6. That is going to be your axis of symmetry, okay? And so that is it. That is how you get the equation of a parabola. There is a little bit to remember, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. The key takeaway here is understanding how to get p and when that p value is going to be negative or positive. The rest is pretty easy. You're simply just plugging in the values and you will get the equation, all right? And so again, if you are curious as to where these equations come from when we're describing a parabola, go ahead and check the video below. I show how to derive it and where it comes from. So make sure you check that out if you're interested. Also, make sure you subscribe. That way you get more math videos in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.